My name is Eliza Monroe. I'm 29 years old. And this is the story of how my parents stole everything meant for me, threw me out like I was nothing, and how I took it all back, piece by piece. I was born in a quiet little town called Ashford Hollow, Missouri. A place where everyone knew your name, and every street carried 100 years of history, but none of that made it feel like home to me. I was a twin, but if you walked into our house, you'd never know it. My sister Clara was the darling of the family. Blonde curls, dimpled cheeks, and a laugh that seemed to command the room. Me. I was the quiet one, the spare part, the afterthought. Even the story of our birth was a warning. Clara cried first, Mom would laugh. I knew she'd be the strong one. Eliza came out second and quiet. I should have known she'd always be different. She'd always say different like it was a defect. My earliest memories weren't of toys or bedtime stories. They were of being shushed at the dinner table, sent to my room when Clara had guests over, and of always being given less. Clara's bedroom was upstairs, painted soft pink with satin curtains, fairy lights, and a vanity set our dad built by hand. I slept in the basement. It wasn't even a real room, just a corner with a mattress, a thrifted bookshelf, and a single flickering bulb. The air was always damp, and sometimes I'd wake up to find silverfish crawling along the cement wall. But no one cared. They never asked if I was scared or cold. When I was 10, Clara got a birthday party with a magician, cotton candy, and a bounce house. I was there too, in the background, cleaning up wrappers while the other kids played. A neighbor asked my mom once, "And the other one? Doesn't she want to play too?" My mother chuckled like it was some kind of joke. "Oh, Eliza. She's not into that stuff. She's quiet." That's how people described me. Quiet, strange, invisible. But I wasn't invisible to my school teachers. I studied harder than anyone else. I won a district-wide math award when I was 12. I still remember how proud I was, running home with a certificate clutched in both hands. I showed it to my dad, just hoping his face might light up. He barely glanced at it. "That's nice. But you should really be more like Clara. She's got personality." My grip on the certificate tightened until the corner tore. I didn't cry. I never cried. Crying was wasted breath in our house. Clara joined cheerleading, the school play, and the photography club. Mom and Dad were front row at every event. I remember once helping the drama team clean up after a performance. As I picked up confetti and tore down backdrops, I watched my parents walk by with Clara, flowers in hand, without even glancing my way. She got new clothes every season, brand-name shoes, designer bags, just because. I wore hand-me-downs from a cousin I'd never met, shirts that hung off my shoulders like curtains, and jeans with holes patched in 3 different places. Just once, I asked my mom why Clara got everything, and I got this. She didn't even look at me. "Because you don't go anywhere important, Eliza," she said. "Don't ask questions that make people uncomfortable." By 16, I had stopped asking anything. I worked weekends at a gas station down the road. Saved every penny. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could get out someday. College. City. Somewhere people didn't already decide who I was before I opened my mouth. Then Clara got pregnant. It was a gray September morning. I remember because the leaves were just starting to fall, and the wind that blew through the basement window was the first real hint of cold. I was folding my blanket when I heard laughter upstairs. Mom calling my name, her voice unusually cheerful. I came up and saw Clara spinning around the dining table, holding her belly and laughing. "It's really a baby." My parents were beaming. Giddy. I stood there, a ghost at my own wake. My mom turned and nodded. "Clara's pregnant. We're going to be grandparents." 3 weeks later they kicked me out. I came home from a late shift, still in my uniform, holding a cup of instant ramen. My mom was waiting in the living room, arms folded neatly in her lap. She patted the seat beside her. "Eliza, honey," she said in a calm, practiced voice. "We've talked it over. Clara and the baby need space. The basement's quieter, better insulated. So we're moving her down there." Blinked. "But that's my room." Well, she continued, as if she were talking about switching out couch cushions, you're old enough to be independent. Justine, it's time. I have nowhere to go. There's a tent in the shed, my dad called from the kitchen, not even bothering to enter the room. You can use it. Still in good condition from last year's camping trip. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I just walked to the backyard and pitched that tent on the brittle dead grass. The sky was overcast. I could still hear Clara laughing through the upstairs window. That night I curled into my sleeping bag, the cold sinking into my bones. I held the cup of ramen in my hands like it was a lifeline. No one brought me a blanket. No one checked in. I didn't expect them to. But I made a silent promise to myself under that pale, cracking moonlight. I would never let them do this to me again. I didn't know how. I didn't know when. But one day, I'd be the one standing at the window, not looking in. The mornings were the hardest. Not because of the cold, though it bit through the thin nylon walls of the tent like knives, but because of the noise. I'd wake to the sounds of breakfast being made inside the house. Pans clanging, coffee brewing, Clara's voice cooing and chattering about baby names. And me. I'd be brushing my teeth with bottled water behind the garage, wiping my face with a rag because the bathroom was occupied all day. I still went to school. Still worked weekends at the gas station and picked up shifts at the bakery downtown when I could. I never told anyone I was living in a tent in my parents' backyard. What would I even say? That my sister got pregnant, and somehow I became the disposable one. People wouldn't believe me. And if they did, they'd just pity me. I didn't want pity. I wanted distance. Freedom. A place where I didn't have to feel like breathing was an inconvenience to someone else. Mr. Walter owned the bakery. An older man with a rough beard and flour always dusted into the lines of his jeans. I used to pass by the back alley behind the bakery after school just to smell the warm bread. One day he caught me lingering. "You hungry, kid?" he asked. I hesitated. "I'm looking for work." He eyed me. "You strong enough to lift trays? Mop floors?" I nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." He didn't smile, didn't pat me on the shoulder. Just turned and said, "Come in at 5. Don't be late." That night, I worked until 10 p.m. washing, wiping, packing pastries, labeling leftover loaves. When we finished, Mr. Walter handed me a paper bag with 2 croissants, a half loaf of sourdough, and a bottle of orange juice. "Eat it now," he said. "Bread's better warm." I sat on the back steps under the flickering alley light and cried for the first time in months. Not because of the food, but because someone had seen me, not ignored me, not stepped over me, not sent me away. Just seen me. From that night on, the bakery became my sanctuary. I worked every evening I could. Mr. Walter didn't ask questions, but one night, after closing up, he handed me a small, rusted key. "There's a storage room upstairs. See now. You can sleep there. Got heat. You'll need to clean it up." I stood there, frozen. "Why?" I whispered. He shrugged. "Because nobody should sleep in the cold. And you don't look like the type to ask for help." I moved into that little attic room with nothing but a backpack and a blanket. The space was dusty and cramped, but it was mine. No laughter echoing above me. No footsteps stomping downstairs to throw me out again. Just quiet. I kept working, saving every dollar. Used an old notebook to budget my income. Food, savings, emergencies. Mr. Walter taught me tricks. How to stretch ingredients, which grocery stores offered day-old discounts, when to buy in bulk. "Money ain't salvation," he told me. "But if you use it right, it'll keep you safe." Those words stuck with me. I finished high school while living above the bakery. Took online courses in the evenings. Learned about accounting, marketing, small business law. I never told Mr. Walter, but I always imagined maybe someday I could run my own place. Somewhere warm, clean, full of light. By the time I turned 21, I had saved enough for a down payment on a modest home. It was a 2-bedroom brick house in Claymont, Delaware, miles away from Ashford Hollow. The first time I stepped inside, I could hardly breathe. The floorboards creaked, the paint peeled, but the scent of old wood and freedom overwhelmed me. No one else had a key. No one could make me leave. I slept on a second-hand mattress, used plastic crates as bookshelves, and bought my first set of pots from a yard sale. And yet every night I felt like royalty. 'Cause I earned this. No one handed it to me. No one could take it from me. I still worked at the bakery, though less now. I picked up part-time gigs helping at a local bookstore and babysitting for neighbors. My world was small but stable. And that was all I ever wanted. Until they came back. It was a Saturday. I was mowing the tiny front lawn, earbuds in, when a silver SUV pulled up to the curb. I didn't recognize it at first. But then the door opened and I saw him, my father. He looked older, gray creeping into his temples, but the set of his jaw was the same. Behind him my mother stepped out. Clara trailed behind with 3 kids, one on her hip, one tugging her sleeve, one running across my grass like it was a park. A man, probably her husband, closed the car door and followed casually. I turned off the mower and waited. "Eliza!" My mother called like we were long-lost friends. "We were just in the neighborhood." "No, you weren't," I said flatly. She laughed nervously. "Well, we heard you bought a house. Your own place. That's wonderful, sweetheart." My father crossed his arms. "We're proud of you." I didn't respond. Clara stepped forward. "It's beautiful, Lisa. But we were wondering. My place is getting tight with the kids and all. And Mom and Dad. Well, they're struggling too. The apartment's not big enough." I raised an eyebrow. So we thought maybe," my mother jumped in, "you'd let us stay. Just until things settle. Like a real family." I didn't laugh. Not even a twitch. I looked them all in the eye one by one. "When I was 16, I began, voice steady. "You kicked me out into a tent because Clara got pregnant. You left me in the cold and called it independence. You never checked on me, never brought me food or blankets. And now you want to move in." Clara's husband stepped in. "Look, it doesn't have to be permanent, just a few months. The kids need space, and you've got a whole house." I stared at him. "Who are you?" "Evan. Clara's husband." He nodded. "Evan, let me explain something. This house was built from every dish I washed, every floor I mopped, every coupon I clipped. It's mine. Not yours. Not theirs. You're not welcome here." "But we're family," my mother snapped. "Blood. Blood doesn't entitle you to my life," I said. My father stepped closer, face hard. "You think you're too good for us now? You think this little house makes you better?" I didn't answer. I opened the gate, stepped aside, and pointed to the sidewalk. "Leave. Now." Clara's face twisted. "This is selfish." I shook my head. "No. You were selfish. And now you're reaping what you sowed." They stood there for a moment, dumbfounded. Then my father muttered something under his breath and turned back to the SUV. My mother glared at me with a look I'd seen all my life. But this time it didn't shake me. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "I used to regret a lot of things," I replied. "But not anymore." I closed the gate behind them. And for the first time in my life I felt safe. They didn't leave quietly. 2 weeks after I turned them away from my doorstep, a thick white envelope showed up in my mailbox. Certified, stamped, and intimidating. First I thought it was a mistake. Maybe some banking paperwork or a tax document I'd overlooked. But when I saw the return address from a law firm in Ashford Hollow, my stomach dropped. Inside was a letter. Legal notice. My parents were suing me. Their claim. That my house, my modest 2-bedroom sanctuary in Claymont, was partially funded by family resources, and that they were entitled to joint ownership. They accused me of withholding communal assets, and stated that they had a right to live there based on familial contribution and hardship. I read the letter 4 times in silence. Every word felt like it was carved out of a lie, dipped in betrayal, and mailed straight from the past. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood in the middle of my living room, where I'd painted the walls with my own hands, where I'd built my first bookshelf, where I'd eaten toast and tea on nights I couldn't afford dinner, and I shook. They weren't just trying to guilt me anymore. They were trying to take everything. I called the one person I knew would understand. Walter. He picked up on the second ring. I need a lawyer, I said. He didn't ask why. He just gave me a name. Denise Warner, he said. Helped me when a supplier tried to cheat me out of a contract. She's no nonsense. She'll fight for you. I contacted her the same day. Denise was in her early 40s, a sharp, commanding woman who didn't waste time on pleasantries. When I walked into her office, she looked me up and down and said, "You're the bakery girl. Walter told me to expect someone tougher." "I am tough," I said quietly. "Good," she replied. "Because this is going to get ugly." I handed her everything. My mortgage papers, bank statements, pay stubs, even photos of the attic room I used to live in above the bakery. Denise flipped through them with quick, practiced eyes. "This helps," she nodded. "But I want to dig deeper. You mentioned once that your grandfather left you an inheritance." I frowned. "That's what I was told. But I never saw a dime." Denise leaned back in her chair. "Then let's find out what happened to it." 2 weeks later, she called me back into her office. I barely sat down before she slid a folder across the desk. "Eliza," she said calmly, "your parents didn't just cut you out. They stole from you." I opened the file with trembling hands. Inside were records from the estate of my late grandfather, Henry Monroe. The will had explicitly stated that a savings account of $63,000 was to be placed in my name and transferred when I turned 18. The document was signed, notarized, and airtight. But it never reached me. "Your grandfather left it to you alone," Denise said. "And look here. Less than a year after he passed, the account was liquidated. Every cent moved into a joint account held by your parents." I stared at the transaction logs. The money had been withdrawn in small chunks over the course of several years, used to pay off their mortgage, fund Clara's wedding, and most insultingly, invest in her husband's failed tech startup. My hands clenched the edge of the desk. "They let me sleep in a tent," I whispered, "while spending the money that was supposed to protect me." Denise nodded slowly. "That's not just neglect. That's embezzlement. And inheritance theft." I looked up at her. "Can we sue?" Then she slid another document toward me. "This is a civil suit for inheritance fraud and theft. If you're ready to go to court, I'll go all the way with you." I didn't hesitate. Sign. What followed was the ugliest, most exhausting stretch of my life. My parents fought back with every trick they had, claiming I was mentally unstable, that I had abandoned the family, that Clara's children saw me as auntie and I was tearing the family apart. But Denise countered every lie with proof. Pay stubs, savings logs, photos of me living in a tent, one taken by a neighbor who'd once nearly called child services. Even a notarized note from my grandfather's lawyer confirming the original terms of the will. I kept working through it all. Early mornings at the bakery, nights painting walls and fixing leaky pipes. I refused to let their chaos undo what I had built. Finally, the court date came. It was a gray Monday morning. I wore the same white blouse Walter had gifted me years ago when I landed my first part-time job. Crisp, plain, but symbolic. I walked into that courtroom with Denise by my side. Heart pounding but head held high. My parents sat on the other side, dressed in designer clothes they probably couldn't afford anymore. Clara wasn't there. Her husband Evan gave a deposition instead, filled with half-truths and false concern. The judge, a firm, weathered woman with tired eyes, listened to every detail. She asked questions, looked over every page, took her time. Then, finally, she read the verdict. After reviewing all submitted evidence, including estate documentation, financial records, and relevant testimonies, the court rules in favor of the plaintiff, Eliza Monroe. The courtroom froze. The defendants, Patrick and Margaret Monroe, are hereby ordered to repay the full inheritance amount of $63,000, along with $18,000 in damages, to the plaintiff. Furthermore, the court finds no legal basis for their claim of shared property ownership. The residence at 142 Breckner Street remains solely under the name and ownership of Eliza Monroe. I didn't cry. I didn't gloat. I just let the words wash over me like warm sunlight breaking through years of storm. Outside the courtroom, Denise clapped her folder shut. You did it. He nodded. We did. She smiled faintly. Now go home. Enjoy your peace. And I did. But the story wasn't over just yet. The courthouse felt smaller when I left it than it had when I entered. Maybe because I was no longer walking in as a scared girl trying to defend herself. I was walking out as a woman who had stood her ground, told her truth and won. Still, I didn't feel celebratory. Not yet. The legal victory gave me justice but not closure. My phone buzzed the next morning. A message from a number I hadn't blocked yet. Dad, we need to talk. I stared at it. The same hands that used to throw away my birthday cards, that had handed me a tent at 16, now wanted to talk. I deleted the message. 2 hours later another came. Clara, the kids miss you. They don't understand why you're being so cold. Cold. That word clawed at me. Cold was sleeping under canvas in winter because no one would give me a blanket. Cold was pretending I didn't exist at Christmas dinner. Cold was my mother telling a neighbor, "Oh, that's just Eliza. She keeps to herself." They didn't know cold. But they were about to. I blocked every number. Then I changed my email address. Then finally I changed the locks on my house, even though the court made it clear they had no legal right to step 1 foot on my property. I didn't want to leave even a window of possibility open. 3 weeks passed. Walter came by one Sunday afternoon with a box of sugar cookies shaped like sunflowers. This place smells like healing, he said, setting the box on my kitchen table. You ever think about teaching? Teaching what? He raised a brow. Baking. You've got skill. Patience. That's rare. The idea sat in the back of my mind like a seed. I watered it slowly. Within 2 months, I turned my small kitchen into a weekend haven for neighborhood kids. We made cinnamon rolls, banana bread, sugar cookies. I bought a second-hand mixer, a longer folding table, and plastic aprons in every color. Every Saturday morning, laughter filled the house. Tiny hands rolled dough, smeared icing, and asked 1,000 questions. For once, I didn't mind the noise. The house that was once just my refuge had become something more. Proof that a home is what you make of it, not what you inherit. Then came the letter. It arrived in an envelope with gold embossing, no return address, and my name spelled in perfect calligraphy. Inside was a formal invitation. The Monroe family reunion. Celebrating legacy, love, and new beginnings. I stared at it, stunned. The reunion was being hosted at a country club in Ashford Hollow. My name was on the guest list. The theme was reconnection. I laughed out loud. But there was more. At the bottom of the page, in neat script, was a handwritten note. Eliza, we hope you can find it in your heart to come. The kids have missed you. Clara's expecting again. We all make mistakes. Family is forever. Mom. That word again. Family. What they meant was, now that we've burned every bridge and lost our lawsuit, we'd like to build a new one with your money and your peace. I folded the invitation in half and threw it into the fireplace. That night, I wrote something I hadn't dared write in years. A letter to myself. You are not forgotten. You were never the backup. You are not the shadow of someone else's spotlight. You are the author now. I tucked that letter into my grandfather's wooden keepsake box, along with every court document, every pay stub I used to defend myself, and the deed to my house. It was a chapter one had closed. But not everyone was ready to turn the page. A week later, Clara showed up. I was finishing a private baking class with a teenage girl named Betrayal when I heard the knock. When I opened the door, there she stood, belly rounded again, hair curled, wearing a tight cardigan and jeans that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Eliza, she said with a practiced smile. Can we talk? No, I said simply. She blinked, thrown off. Please. Just 5 minutes. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, and folded my arms. Make it 2. Clara sighed, glancing back at her car where her husband sat sulking in the driver's seat. I came to say I'm sorry. For everything. Mom and Dad too. Or just Old school. They didn't know how to raise two girls who were different. I said nothing. I know we had our differences, she continued. But you're my sister. And the kids. Stop, I cut in. You don't get to stand on my porch and pretend this is just about misunderstanding. You helped kick me out. You took my room. My place. You spent my inheritance. Her smile cracked. I didn't know about that money. Did you ask? I thought it was for all of us. Mom said Grandpa wanted us to be stable. He did, I snapped. He wanted me to be stable because he knew none of you would take care of me. And you proved him right. Clara looked down at her shoes. I'm struggling, Eliza. Evan lost his job. The kids. We're behind on rent. I thought maybe you could, help out for a few months. There it was. The real reason. I shook my head slowly. You're not here because you're sorry. You're here because I won. She opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. No. Gave you a room once. You took the whole house. I gave you silence once. You tried to erase me. I have nothing left to give you. Eliza, come on. Don't be like this. Like what? Yes. Honest. Boundaried. Unwilling to set myself on fire to keep you warm. Her cheeks flushed. I'm not the same girl you left in the cold, Clara. And you can't guilt me into pretending you are either. She started to cry. But I'd seen better performances at high school theater night. You always thought you were better than us, she whispered. No, I said. I just refused to stay broken. I turned open my door and stepped back inside. I didn't look back. That evening, Brielle left with 2 containers of cupcakes and a big grin. Thanks, Miss Eliza, she called. See you next week. Smiled. It wasn't just about cupcakes anymore. I was teaching resilience. That night, I sat by the fireplace and watched the embers glow. I thought about the tent, the bakery attic, the courtroom, the thick folder of evidence that told the truth I was once too scared to speak. And then I remembered something my grandfather used to say. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you build while you're still here. For the first time in my life, I understood what he meant. The following months were the quietest and most peaceful I'd known in my life. I rebuilt my mornings with structure and warmth. A cup of tea on the front porch, early prep in the kitchen for baking class, and an hour of reading beside the window before the sun fully rose. I no longer had to flinch when my phone buzzed or brace for a knock on the door. I had drawn my boundary and enforced it. It wasn't about revenge. Not anymore. It was about reclamation. But peace, I've learned, doesn't stay quiet forever. Sometimes it tests you, just to see if you'll protect what you've earned. It was mid-November when Walter called. I hadn't seen him in nearly a month. He'd been traveling to see his son out west and had left the bakery in the hands of a young apprentice. When I answered, his voice was hoarse. You might want to come down here, he said. There's something I think you should see. I pulled on my jacket and drove over. The bakery, Sunrise Oven, had always been a beacon to me. Even now, just walking past the red brick wall and the wooden sign made me breathe deeper. But when I stepped inside, the familiar scent of warm bread was laced with tension. Walter was standing behind the counter, arms crossed. He nodded toward a booth in the corner. And sitting there was my mother, Margaret Monroe, still upright with poise. Still in her pressed coat and expensive boots. Still holding her purse like it was part of her body. She looked up and met my eyes with something that almost resembled shame, but not quite. Eliza, she said. I didn't sit. What are you doing here? Walter stayed close, just behind me. She glanced at him and then back to me. I know you don't want to see me. I know I don't deserve it. That's correct, I replied calmly. But I needed to say this to your face, she went on. We've lost everything. I didn't respond. She continued. After the court ruling, your father spiraled. He quit his job, refused to speak to anyone. Clara's husband walked out. Evan just packed his bags and left the state. Said he was done supporting a family with nothing to show for it. And asked coldly. And Clara moved in with us. 3 kids. No income. Our savings are gone. Your father blames me for the lawsuit. Says I should have never touched the inheritance. I stared at her. He's not wrong. She ignored the jab. We've sold the house, she whispered, almost like she couldn't believe the words herself. We're moving into a subsidized unit. Eliza. Her voice cracked. We're ruined. You're not ruined, I said. You're finally facing consequences. Tears rimmed her eyes, but I knew her well enough to know they weren't for me. I just wanted you to know. What we did to you, it wasn't right. Thought Clara needed more. That you were stronger. No, I said. You just thought I was disposable. Silence fell between us. Then I added, the irony is you were right about one thing. I was stronger. But not because of you. In spite of you. I turned to leave. But before I could, she said something that stopped me. There's one more thing. About your grandfather. Paused halfway to the door. What about him? Her voice trembled. He left a letter. For you. I wasn't supposed to open it, but I did. After he passed. Kept it all these years. I brought it. She reached into her purse and pulled out a worn envelope. My name was written on the front, in the firm. Slanted handwriting I remembered from the birthday cards he used to send me. The only family member who ever did. I hesitated. Took it. But I didn't thank her. As I stepped outside into the fading afternoon light, I clutched that envelope like it was a piece of him I could finally reclaim. Not for her. Not for closure. But for me. Back at home, I sat on my front porch, the one I'd painted robin's egg blue, and held the letter against my chest for a long moment before opening it. My dearest Eliza, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer around. And I'm sorry I couldn't do more for you while I was alive. But I saw you. I saw everything. I saw the way they treated you, how they left you out, dismissed your wins and stole your light. I tried to protect you with what I could leave behind. I just hope you found a way to survive until now. But don't just survive, Eliza. Live. Build. Be bold. The world tried to bury you, but that's because it knew you were a seed. One day, you'll grow into something they can't even touch. And when they come back, because they will, remember. Forgiveness is not obligation. Kindness is not debt. And blood is not family. You are enough. Just as you are. With all my love. Grandpa Henry. Cried. Deep, heaving sobs that didn't come from pain, but from something older. Something like healing. That night, I placed the letter in the wooden keepsake box beside my own letter to myself. 2 generations finally in harmony. Weeks passed. The holidays came. I didn't get a single call from my mother or Clara. And I didn't expect one. But on New Year's Eve, while preparing cupcakes for the neighborhood kids, I got a knock at the door. It wasn't them. It was Lily, my youngest cousin. The only one who'd ever tried to stay in touch. She stood there holding a grocery bag filled with hand-drawn cards. From the kids, she said. For your baking class. Smiled. For once. Not with suspicion or weight, but ease. I invited her in. And in that small act, I realized something. Forgiveness doesn't always mean opening the door to those who hurt you. Sometimes it means letting the light in for those who never had a chance to hurt you at all. By the time spring rolled around, the neighborhood kids called my house the Sugar Cottage. Saturday mornings were sacred. My little front yard would be filled with laughter, sneakers thudding on the walkway, and backpacks stuffed with sprinkles, frosting tubes, and cookie cutters shaped like animals and hearts. Inside, the air was always warm with the smell of cinnamon, vanilla, and fresh dough. My kitchen, a space once hollow and silent, had become alive. The joy was honest, pure, something I had rarely known growing up. And I wasn't just teaching kids how to bake, I was teaching them how to believe in themselves. I could see it in the way they grinned when their cupcakes didn't cave, or when a loaf came out golden brown. And just like that, the house became more than a home. It became a sanctuary. Not just for me. One Saturday afternoon, while cleaning up icing smears from the counter, I saw Lily, my cousin, still lingering in the doorway, chewing her lip like she wanted to say something. "Everything okay?" Yes. She hesitated. "You ever think about going back to Ashford Hollow?" I didn't even look up. "No. Not even for Grandpa's memorial." My hands froze. "What memorial?" "They're holding one," she said gently. "A small gathering. Just close family. Thought maybe you'd want to be there. You were his favorite." The words made something sharp twist in my chest. Grandpa Henry had been the only one who ever truly saw me. The only one who tried to make up for what my parents refused to acknowledge. But return to Ashford Hollow. To that house. That street. That silence. Still a part of me whispered, "Maybe it's time to see how far you've come." "I'll think about it," I said. And I did. For a week. Until I stood in front of my closet, staring at the white blouse Walter had given me. The one I'd worn to court, the one that had become a quiet kind of armor. Put it on. Not for them. For Grandpa. The memorial was held in the church at the center of town. The same one we'd driven past 1,000 times as kids but only entered when Clara had a recital. I walked in alone, head high, heart steady. There were only a few rows of people. Clara sat with her kids near the front, Evan nowhere in sight. My parents were there too, older, thinner, faces drawn not with grief, but with the dullness of defeat. They saw me but didn't speak. I didn't sit with them. I stood in the back, quiet, observing. The pastor read a simple eulogy, then opened the floor for memories. Clara stood first. She talked about how Grandpa used to sneak candy into her jacket pocket, how he once fixed her bike, how he always made her feel like the favorite. Her voice cracked in rehearsed places, her tears falling just enough to be visible. Waited. Listen. And then the room grew silent. The pastor looked around. Anyone else? I stepped forward. Not because I wanted to outshine Clara, but because silence, after everything, was no longer acceptable. "I'm Eliza," I said. "Henry Monroe's granddaughter." Several heads turned. Grandpa didn't sneak candy into my pocket. He didn't fix my bike. But he did write me letters. Quiet, honest ones. Ones where he said, "I see you." He didn't always know how to speak over the noise of our family, but he made sure to leave something behind for me. Something no one else could take away. Pause. He knew I would need to be strong. He knew I'd be alone. And he still chose to believe in me anyway. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. When I stepped back, Clara wouldn't look at me. Neither would my mother. But it didn't matter. Because I had said what I needed to say. After the service, Lily caught up to me outside. "You shook them," she said, half in awe, half in worry. Clara looked like she saw a ghost. "Good," I replied. "Maybe now she knows I'm not dead." We sat on the front steps of the church, the sun warming the bricks. For a moment it almost felt like something had closed. Neatly, finally. Until Lily turned to me and said, "Did you hear what they're planning?" My stomach tensed. "What?" "They're trying to sell Grandpa's land. The field behind the old farmhouse." My eyes narrowed. "They can't." "They're going to try," she said. "Clara and your parents want to split the money and say it's part of the family estate." I shook my head. That land was never part of the estate. Grandpa kept that separate. "I thought so too," Lily said. "But they think you're done fighting." I stood up. "I'm never done fighting when it comes to him." That night, I pulled out Grandpa's letter again. Reread the part that said, "One day, you'll grow into something they can't even touch." They had touched enough. Taken enough. So I called Denise. She answered on the second ring. "Please tell me you're not in trouble again." "Not trouble," I said. "But they're trying to sell land they don't own." There was a pause. "Send me everything you have," she said. "I'll dig up the deed." Within 72 hours she called back. "You were right," she said. "The field behind the farmhouse. It was never part of your grandfather's estate. He bought it separately and designated it in a different trust. And guess whose name he placed on that trust before he died?" I held my breath. "Yours, Eliza. It's yours." I sat down slowly, as the weight of those words settled in my bones. They thought I was out of strength, out of fight. But Grandpa had given me one last gift, one final card they didn't know I held. It was time to use it. The last time my parents tried to take something that belonged to me, I fought them with court records, savings logs, and sleepless nights. This time I had something better. Proof. 3 weeks after Denise confirmed my name was on the trust, I filed a formal legal notice blocking the sale of the land behind the old Monroe farmhouse. Clara and my parents had already met with a real estate agent, listed the property on a regional land auction site, and were anticipating a 6-figure payday. Imagine their surprise when the agent called and said, "There's a legal claim on the deed. You can't sell what you don't own." I didn't tell them right away. I wanted them to sweat. Instead, I mailed a single-page letter to my mother's new address, the subsidized apartment complex Clara had mentioned, the one across town from the burned bridges of Ashford Hollow. It read, "To Margaret and Patrick Monroe, the field you tried to sell does not belong to you. Never did. Grandpa knew what he was doing when he left it to me. And unlike you, I intend to honor that trust. Consider this your final notice. Stop taking what isn't yours. You've already lost everything. You can't take what you never earned. Eliza Monroe." I signed it in ink, folded it sharply, mailed it with no return address. The response came not through the mail, but through Lily, again. She knocked on my door with a phone in hand and a look on her face like she didn't know whether to laugh or apologize. "She's spiraling," Lily said. "Clara's calling everyone, saying you're cursed." Smirk. "No, I'm protected." And that's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to just keep the land. I was going to use it. That summer, I broke ground on a small community baking school. A converted barn, fitted with commercial ovens, shelves of ingredients, and rows of workstations for students. I called it the Sunrise Field Kitchen, a tribute to Walter's Bakery, to Grandpa's land, and to every seed planted in silence that grew anyway. The grand opening was packed. Kids from the neighborhood, parents, seniors. Walter, now fully retired, came in with a cane and a camera. Even Denise showed up, holding a cupcake with a small paper flag that said, "Justice tastes sweet." And that day I gave a short speech. I hadn't planned on it. But as I stood in front of that crowd, all I could think of was the tent in the backyard, the court verdict, Grandpa's voice in my head. So I said, "When I was 16, I was told I wasn't worth space in a house. That my value was measured by how quiet I could be. That I didn't belong. But here's the truth. You can grow up unseen and still become unstoppable. You can lose everything and still build something bigger. You can be pushed out and still rise up. This place exists because someone once left me out in the cold. Now I create warmth for others." Applause erupted, but it wasn't the noise that made me emotional. It was the silence that followed. Heavy, respectful, and real. A few days later I received a letter. From my father. It was handwritten, shaky, brief. "I didn't know she did that with your inheritance. I should have asked. I should have stopped it. I know I failed you. I just wanted you to know. I never forgot you. I just didn't know how to say it. Maybe I still don't. Dad." I folded the letter and placed it in the box with Grandpa's note. I didn't reply. Because sometimes silence is the most honest answer. Clara tried to call next. Then texted. "Clara, I saw the article in the paper. They called you a community trailblazer. You really think you're better than us now?" Blocked her. I don't owe explanations to people who only reach out to hurt me. But a week later, I got a knock on the door from someone I never expected to see again. My mother. She looked thinner. Hair pulled back tightly. Her once perfect manicure chipped. But her eyes, still sharp, met mine without flinching. "I'm not here to ask for anything," she said. "Then why are you here?" "Yes. To see it," she said. "The school. The house. The life you built." I didn't move to open the gate. "You can see from here." She nodded slowly. "I thought you'd be angry forever." "I'm not angry," I said. "Not anymore." "Then what are you?" I looked at her, Then at the porch behind me, the flower beds I planted, the bakery sign hanging in my front window. I'm free. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For once, she didn't try to guilt me, didn't throw the word family like a net. She just nodded, turned, and walked away. I watched her go. No tears. No shaking hands. Just peace. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of mint tea, watching the sun set over the little garden in front of my house, the house no one could take from me. And I thought about how far I'd come. From the girl in the tent to the woman with keys. From the ignored daughter to the mentor. From the abandoned child to the architect of her own legacy. Welcome to Revenge Echoes, where stories speak louder than revenge. And sometimes the best revenge isn't rage. It's rebuilding. It's becoming unshakable. My name is Eliza Monroe. I'm 29 years old. And I am no one's shadow anymore. Sometimes the people who break you are the same ones who claim to love you most. But real family is not who shares your blood. It's who protects your peace. Eliza Monroe's story reminds us, we don't owe forgiveness to those who made us fight just to exist. If you've ever been underestimated, cast aside, or forced to rise alone, share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Echoes for more true-to-life stories of betrayal, power, and redemption.